Water and Soil Resources was trying to move forward with a watershed concept, that is something that they looked at is, okay, how big of a watershed? How small a watershed? What's too big? What's too small to do watershed-based planning that's not so cumbersome because the watershed is so small and you're designating a lot of staff time to do that, or it's such a big area that it's meaningless. So they decided to settle on what is called the HUC 8, the Hydrologic Unit Code, the 8 scale. So that's what most of these are across the state. But because we're along the boundary with the Mississippi River, not all of our HUC 8 watersheds in the state, all the water flows to one point, like the Root and the Zumbro. All the water in those watersheds flows to one point. That's not the case here. We have lots of little watersheds that, for lack of a better word, are lumped together because they're stuck between these classic or true watersheds. And so that's what they did, the La Crescent and the Mississippi Winona. Most of those watersheds are in Wisconsin. And
So with this geographic, how is this going to impact the city of Winona? Are we now going to rule the water plans? Because that's the only major city in this whole
yes.
geographic area. Because
We
I don't
have a
think,
water plan for the county. Winona's in it.
right, but what I'm saying is at some point in time, are we going to be held is this group going to be held accountable because the Mississippi River and the city of Winona? I mean, one major flood project could take all the funds, or is it really, is it the rural land that for future funding and such? Does the city of Winona then fall into this grouping?
They could. The Zumbro watershed plan that's going on right now, the city of Rochester is actually participating very actively in, and they are on the policy committee. So that could possibly happen, having the city of Winona be a part of this as well.
So my question, another question is, this will entirely engulf the Whitewater watershed, correct?
Yes, it will.
So currently we have a three-county board that makes up Whitewater Joint Powers and have been administering watershed-based program for many years. So is there any talk about, isn't this a redundancy to do the same thing with, so now we have to have a board for the one watershed, one plan, and we still have the Whitewater Joint Powers, and it's all covering the same property. I mean, it's a lot of meetings that ultimately the taxpayer pays for all the mileage, all the staff, all to really pretty much be doing the same thing twice. But is this gonna do anything different? And I'm the one who knows the answer, but on some of this, but I want everyone else to know. Alls we're doing is changing boundaries, and any of the outside perimeter counties are not even using the watershed boundaries, they're using state boundaries just like they used to. We're not coming up with any new programs, we're just coming up with a different boundary to administer those same programs. But, so I'm asking for Whitewater Joint Powers, different, better, worse, what are we doing? Is that gonna continue?
Whitewater is a joint powers board.
Go away.
That depends. You know, how, it depends on what that board thinks is the right thing to do. The one watershed, one plans, I don't think, I'm not aware of any of the other one watershed, one plans in the state doing a joint powers board. The Root, for example, has a joint power, you know, it's a joint powers agreement, but it's more of a collaborative. You're not having a board.
No, the Cannon one is a joint powers board.
It is.
Yes. Mhm.
That's where this whole discussion of the governance is.
So you're getting into a
Ongoing.
different question there. What happens to Whitewater Joint Powers Board? It was an uphill battle trying to eliminate the Southeast Minnesota Water Resource Board, and this was the only county that yes, this county is gonna say, yeah, we want this level, and we don't wanna get rid of that other level.
And that group has obtained millions of dollars over the years.
But this group is gonna redundantly encompass it and be, Whitewater is gonna make up more than 50% of this new watershed.
No, this is supposed to simplify it, Commissioner Jacob. Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I can't imagine that we would keep two boards too long that do the same thing. The impact of this is the planning allows a collaborative group to identify the projects and the priorities. And then by water systems, not by individual counties. And then it frees up, well, it allows for applications for projects and implementation grants based on that collaborative planning, which is different than any planning that's been done before. And we know the Root River has been, you know, having 1.4 million, which goes basically to farmers for their best practices, for their implementation projects, for their conservation projects, all of those things that contribute to a healthy water system. And so I just think that if we're looking for a healthy water system, that this kind of planning and then this kind of project implementation needs to take place. It's a two-step process. You can't decide the projects unless you have the group priorities and the group identification, and that's by water system. So it just kind of keeps feeding each other. So, you know, I see the value of this kind of planning and this implementation process. And the value is for our farmers and for our agriculture areas and industry here. So, and for our citizens if the water is ultimately improved.
I didn't actually make a motion.
No, but it was. What
I'd
the
make that
wishes of the
motion.
board, to table until our next meeting, being that we got additional information.
I'd like to review that information before I vote.
Table until our February. I'll second that. But when we get substantially new information, it's. We have a motion to table the action on the resolution until February 25th. Any discussion?
Madam Chair. yeah.
Commissioner Meyer.
In general, I think it's important. We're missing out on big opportunities. Way of operating on water planning. Regardless of what gripes we may have about it, it would be, I think, detrimental to citizens and to farmers and to landowners. The funding process is happening. So I have no issue with the suggested changes that Jacob had recommended for the resolution. So in general, I do support this, and I'm totally fine with.
All those in favor of the motion of tabling to the next meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Carries. So just change the recommended changes and put it on for action item. Thank you. All right. Pat, receive the monthly finance and budget update.
I'll provide the updated information for the month of December. Starting revenues were 13.5 million. Actual revenues were 2.1. Actual expenditures were 2.2. Ending cash in the general fund was 13.4. For the year, started out at 14.1. Actual revenues were 20.6 million. and actual expenses were 20.3 million, ending cash was 13.4 million. The variance in the general fund at, for December was 676 compared to last year, or negative 676 compared to a negative 240. Looking at the very bottom, the variance is a negative 2 million compared to a negative 840 last year. I do want to point out that community services is in a positive cash flow at the end of December of 127,000.
Awesome, that's
Yeah,
awesome. All
that's
right,
it.
yeah,
That's
there you
great.
go.
So if anybody has any,
Accomplishment.
It really is.
Very
yeah,
big accomplishment.
that's the first time it's been in a positive for, I'm gonna say, probably 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, it is.
And look at the good work they're doing, and, wow, yeah.
So if anybody has any questions on this document, next document, summary cash flow. Beginning cash flow starts at 8.6 million. Actual revenues are 47.9. Actual expenses are 50 million. Ending cash is 16.5. Again, a negative 2 compared to a negative 840,000. Any questions on this one?
Looking at the wrong chart, or you said, isn't it
Been
18?
18.
18.6 million, isn't that what you meant?
What did I say?
Eight.
Said eight.
Oh, yeah,
I was
18.
looking for
Sorry.
that number, yeah.
Yeah, really, I was like looking
I was
all
the right
over.
page.
Sorry, yeah, it's 18. If no questions on that document, we can go to the summary budget. Summary budget, we're at 100%. I'm not going to go through all the different numbers. I just am going to point out that in the interest, we have 420 compared to our budget of 180.
Sales tax revenue, that is actual then for 20.
This is actually the 2019, and actually the reason that we have more expenses than revenues is we actually built up revenues because we did that project. I don't remember which, it's the old Goodview Road. I don't remember the number, but on that, that's why we're spending more because we actually saved money from the previous year and actually pushed that project back 1 year.
Talk about the state of Minnesota giving us estimates and projections. That's altogether different than what they estimated and projected. But then when they talk about surpluses at the state level, I question their numbers because even in our little much more than what they had projected initially.
Yeah, because we're getting right around $3 million.
A lot more than they thought. A lot of roads to fix.
If there's no other questions, thank you.
All right. Communications, Commissioner Meyer.
Yes. Winona State is having, that's all I have, so if that's not enough, too bad. Winona State is bringing some speakers in. They're going to be coming over 2 nights talking about groundwater. It's a presentation that I saw back in October. Rochester, and that time it was about Olmsted County, so this time they're going to focus on. So they're finishing up our geologic atlas and have married that data to some of that MDA well testing, township level well testing data. A fascinating conversation.
Building is that? Is that a science lab
Yeah,
building?
yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is a separate standing building. Okay, all right.
The science lab is in the science building.
If you Googled it on their campus, you'd be able to find it, yeah.
It's an area I usually try to avoid because it's a hard area to navigate if you're not familiar with it.
And a hard area to
It's
find
on the
parking.
ground, yeah, it's on the ground floor. You just walk in and it's right there.
Commissioner Jacob.
Yeah, just gonna mention tomorrow night is the officers meeting up at Wilson.
I have 2 things that I would like us to consider and maybe ask staff to get some research. Been really thinking about this jail and how we're going to, the citizens are asking and everything. And so I don't know if this is possible. I think we have to get maybe some creative financing. My rural residents always have a gut feeling that they're paying proportionally more. If you own land, if we put it in a general levy, of course, your taxes are gonna go up and the rural landowner is always paying more. I'm just wondering on the physical bond, the bond for the physical building, if we can do something where it's a flat fee per parcel. People can appreciate infrastructure. Jail is infrastructure, it's a building. If everybody paid equally, each parcel paid equally, like, I simplify it down, our blue bins. Every blue bin pays the same fee, regardless. If we could come up with some system to make it more fair for everybody, and I just, ask staff, maybe staff do some research on how things are. I realize staffing will be part of a levy, and a levy, will grow and change.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. So I just asked staff to look into something like that. I know my rural residents could maybe grasp that concept better. The other thing is with our discussion today on the solar, and unfortunately Stephanie and Kay have left. We went around and around about an IUP or a CUP, and they say it can't be a IUP because it doesn't have an ending date, but that thought process is wrong. These solar things, they have an agreement with XL for 25 years. They have an agreement with the landowner for 25 years. So why aren't we making them IUPs? Because one of the concerns is from a public, they say, well, we don't do anything to enforce things, which, right, we don't have land cops. But if we had it as an IUP, at least it would, in 25 years, and we asked for a decommissioning plan. So if a CUP just can, basically, the way I've been instructed is a CUP goes on forever, it goes with the land. So an IUP would give it a timeline, and we could always extend it. We're saying 25 years, but we don't know if they're still producing power and efficiently, right? But there's verbiage in the planning commission packet saying, well, it doesn't have a deadline, and I think that's flawed, and I think we should review that if solar shouldn't be IUPs versus CUPs. And then the steep slope issue. A lot of people are saying, did we move it because of people seeing it in glare, or are we moving it and using more cropland? Should it be up on the hillside some more? But we have this, this percent slope that we don't let things be built. I just, in my gut, feel like we maybe should review that and where we're allowing these.
Madam Chair, are
Yes.
you asking for us to have a future conversation?
Yeah,
about
I think we
this?
need some more research, some conversation where we want to go with this, and so maybe a working session.
Because we're not gonna have a conversation.
No. But again, maybe ask staff to think about those things, the IUP, CUP, and slope.
I'm not gonna second it, because I think I already put on the planning commission's agenda. Planning commission or the county board, so I feel like both of your issues are somewhat
So you can take my thoughts and feelings to
Well,
the
that was
planning
exactly
commission
what
session.
my concern was, that we would discuss it before the planning commission. I would like the planning commission to
But staff is
again,
gone,
or
so-
whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
staff is gone, so.
So
okay.
I wouldn't support a future agenda item yet on this.
Right. The idea is, I'm sorry, you're right, is to send it to planning and get some more thoughts on that. But it seems like we're getting hung up on some things. All right. No further business, move to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned. Now we need, well, let's